Hello and welcome to Lemon Drops Gaming. My name is Devin and today we'll be discussing the top 10 side cards. Joining me today I have my father, Leon, and a special guest, winner of 2 Yu-Gi-Oh! Regionals, Ryne. How are you guys doing today?
What up? I'm good.
I'm doing well.
I just
Okay. Oh, yeah?
I just canceled all my credentials by presenting myself with what up, but
Yeah.
what up?
Yeah, that's totally fine. So before we start, let's discuss exactly what the criteria were for this list. So, Leon, what was your criteria?
In creating a side card list, I wanted to make, I kind of weighted it based on whether the card was good for all decks or just some. I do have a few cards that they're extremely good against the current meta, but they're only good in a couple decks. So instead of being, one, two, or three, they're down at the bottom. Um, but still, because they're such strong cards against the current meta, I still had to keep them in the game. And then some of the other things are I ended up with close to 20 side cards on my list, and I had to pare it down a little bit. And I found myself listing cards that were more main deck cards. I mean, they're not always going to be there, but um, I thought more often than not they're going to be main decked instead of side decked. So
Okay.
that's how I came up with my list.
So, Ryne, what qualities must a card possess in order to make it into your top 10?
Well, I just did the top 10 of the October 2014 format. So, I think that to be in this list, the card needed to be something that you would like reasonably throw into your deck against the majority of the things you'd be playing against. There's a couple cards in there that are more generic, but the way I play is also I don't like putting cards in my deck that only work against one other thing. I like generic cards that work against multiple things in case there's some kind of rogue deck. I like to have cards to throw in against those two. So
Okay. I guess that makes sense. So now we have a rough understanding of what you two decided to make your list based on. Let's get the show on the road with number 10. So let's let Leon start.
Okay, number 10 on my list is Quackimiro Drago. And I chose this card because it stops the current meta, which is Shadal's and Burning Abyss and um, and Stellar Knights. So
And it stops it by not letting them actually special their
special
cards,
summon
right?
any light or dark
Okay.
monsters. But the reason that it's not up higher is once again, it's kind of a specialized side card. It's not going to work in every deck because you either have to have dragons or you have to have Iron Core to make that work. So, um, number 10 is Kakimuro Drago, but it could be much higher if you actually were able to use it effectively.
Okay. So Ryan, what's your number 10?
my number 10 card is Regeki. I mean, I'm not that crazy about it, but I feel like because it exists, I have to use it now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's not that good against the top three decks. I guess that's why I wasn't so crazy about it. Like it's okay against Hoban Shaddolls, but Hoban Shaddolls aren't really a thing anymore because Soul Charge is at one now. So, I wouldn't put it in against any of those three decks, but like there are so many other random things I could play against that Regeki would be so strong against that it had to be in the side deck list.
Okay. Any comments on that?
I find it interesting. I'm going to comment more on the decision of Konami to bring it back than it being on the list. I find it interesting that Konami chose to bring it back instead of changing Dark Hole to 2. Because they're essentially, not completely, but essentially the same card. Um, because they're getting rid of the other one, your opponent's monsters. But on the flip side of that, I do understand why, because of the cost element, that's associated to it. It's just that was kind of an interesting thought. That's all.
I mean, I think people have been starting to cut Dark Hole even from their side decks right now because it's just not that good against Burning Abyss or Shaddolls or even Tellers. So people have just been cutting Dark Hole, and I guess they just thought they could bring it back. They're probably going to reprint it and then new Legendary collection, so it'll be a way if they can sell that. That's probably part of it also.
Okay.
Like it doesn't impact the game too much, and they can make money off selling reprints. So why not bring it
So,
back?
so now to number 9, and we'll just go in reverse order. So we'll start with Ryne and then go to Leon.
Oh, my number 9 card is Dimensional Prison. I know it's like sometimes it's a main deck card for people, but I'm not a fan of battle traps really because it seems like I can never use them because people always find a way to destroy them before they even attack, and that's why I put it in the side deck because there are some things that it's just so strong against. It's so strong against a window. It's so strong against a Dante. It's so strong against Deneb. Even if a Deneb's going to attack, I guess that doesn't happen too much. But getting rid of that loop is important. And then it's really good against random things too. Like it's good against Dragon Rulers. So there's just so many things you can side in against because this whole game is revolving around the graveyard right now. But
Okay.
I don't think it's worthy of a main deck just because I mean it's a battle trap. Some decks just pop your cards before they even go into the battle.
It's just too slow.
Yeah, and hands aren't really that present in the meta anymore, so it can totally be left in the side deck. But I still think it's a valid card.
Okay. Uh, Leon.
Um, my number 9. This is kind of a weird way of doing it, but my number 9 is the Forbidden Trio, which is Forbidden Dress, Forbidden Lands, and Forbidden Chalice. And the reason that I did all three in one spot is when I'm deck building, I generally have one of the three in my main deck, meaning that I'm siding the other ones.
That's
Um,
kind of a lot of cards to be running in all your stuff.
and once again, if I'm running three lances, I'm going to run either side either one or two chalice and one dress, or because dress is mainly there for the wonderful artifact cards. Um,
But you have to use that preemptively.
when they go off, you can chain to them going out, so it happens before the target occurs on the artifacts.
Does it? I guess I
Yeah.
don't actually know the
When
ruling on that.
Sanctum goes off, I chain to Sanctum, and then Sanctum sends the card away, and I've already got mine targeted.
Oh yeah, dress will save you from a moral tech, but moral tech will just destroy something else. So you'll still kind of be losing out on the advantage in the long.
Yeah.
I agree, but I mean, even better than that, if I have one card on the field, or at that time two, um, I'll have I'll have Dress and my monster on the field. Moral Tech comes out. He doesn't have a choice. He has to destroy a card. I dress mine. He can't destroy it, and he has to destroy himself.
Okay. I guess I kind of see the logic behind it. In any
But
case, the
the
Forbidden
the
Trio.
whole point of that being that's why number 9 is the Forbidden series. I'm only going to run one in my side deck, but it just depends upon which one I have and which deck I'm building.
Okay. So let's move to number 8, Dad.
Number 8 I have is Vanity's Emptiness.
Okay.
And Vanity's I hate this card. I hate it with a passion. I hate running it. Um, it's so strong, and if you make a mistake as a player, which I'm so prone to making, I make more mistakes than anybody else. Um, it just bites you. But that said, if you know how to use the card, you can use it to your advantage, and Vanities is a killer.
Okay. And Ryan, you're number 8?
My number 8 is Breakthrough Skill, and the reason it's on this list, I actually have been maining 2 Breakthrough Skill in almost everything I've made, but I side the third one in everything, so I just thought it was strong enough to add into this top list of side cards because there are some decks it's just so essential in because people side in floodgate monsters and it hits those, it hits Winda, it hits artifacts. If you draw a breakthrough skill, you don't have to deal with the artifacts. You don't have to deal with quick effects on your turn when it's in your graveyard. So it just has a double it just works twice, which is really nice. And the other thing I like about it is it, you can't MST it like you can MST Fiendish. I mean, it doesn't stop attacks, but the fact that you can't be spaced make generally it's always going to resolve unless my opponent has Book of Moon or Trap Stun.
This
You
is one of them that I did not put um, on my list for the main reason that both that and Fiendish are both main deck cards to me. Um, I tend to run a fairly trap heavy lineup, but that said, yeah, that's why that didn't make my list is because to me it's more of a main deck card than a side deck card.
see that's what I was thinking too, but since I always side the third one, I thought I deserved a spot too.
And you're absolutely right.
It's
Okay.
and if I wasn't maining the card, I'd have to cite it. And especially right now, it's so good against stuff like Mathematician.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. So now to number 7, Ryan.
My number 7 card is Flying Sea. I only have it at position 7 because I'm not a fan of Floodgates, but Flying Sea is so strong that I just had to be on the list. It's kind of going to counter what I was saying about Breakthrough Skill a little bit, because something I like about Flying Sea is that your opponent can't Breakthrough Skill it because it's on their side of the field, and Breakthrough Skill says opponent. But Flying Sea is a really good stop to Satellar Knights, um, which is a pretty big deck right now, just because they can't really do anything but crash the Flying Sea. So if you need to sit for a couple turns, just give them a Flying Sea and put a monster in defense mode. They don't play tributes and they don't have synchros, so they can't really get out of the lock from it. Um, I remember reading this card when I was trying to figure out how to deal with Madolches, but then I found out they were just kind of sacking me. And then I figured out how to beat the deck. But um, it's just really strong against that. I mean, you can use it against Burning Abyss too, but they have tribute summon sometimes, so it's not the
Yeah.
wisest choice. So I guess it's okay at spot number 7, but it's definitely a strong enough card to be on there. It's also really good against a Soul Charge sometimes, depending on which deck it is against. It's just situational, so it's like good in the side.
I mean, I remember running it in my side way back when I was playing Evil Swarms, and I would always side it against Constellar and Evil Swarm decks because they just didn't get around it. But in any case, Dad, number 7.
Number 7 is Thunder King Ryo. Um, Stopping your opponent from searching their deck um, is huge, and uh, especially against the current meta. And it kind of goes hand in hand with vanities, because if you get vanities out in Thunder King Ryo, it really makes it difficult for somebody to get over the top of you. Thunder King's a fairly high attack, and um, yeah, it makes for a difficult run. And if somebody decides or it does get around it, you can distribute itself to um, destroy that monster. So Thunder King Ryo is my number 7.
Okay. Back to you again with number 6.
Number 6, funny, Ryan just mentioned it. My number 6 was Flying Sea, and I've been debating moving that all the way up to number 4 because I think it's that good. I think it does a pretty good job of ruining just about every deck. The only one it doesn't really ruin is the Shaddolls. And with Shaddolls topping as often as they do, right now in the current meta, they're topping 44% of the time, and Burning Abyss is topping 21% of the time, and Stellar Knights are topping 19% of the time, and no other deck in the entire meta is topping more than 2%. I mean, they're not even making it to 2%. Um, it's
What
pretty good
what's the
against.
combined total of all other decks put together?
Uh, yeah, the combined total of all the other decks put together is minute, essentially.
Okay.
And so when it comes, Flying Sea does pretty well against most of them. Um, if I knew that I was going to be facing Stellar Knights and Burning Abyss all day long, I'd be maining it. But there's that Shadal matchup, so that makes it a side card and pushes it fairly high on my list because it is so strong.
Okay. Ryne, number 6.
All right, my top 6 list is the ones I have really solid. My I was I mean some my 6 through 10 or 7 through 10 was a little filler-ish, but I still thought about it. But I'm more solid on these ones. And my number 6 choice is DD Crow. I only have it not as number 1 because it's not the greatest at this current moment. Because it's not really good enough against Shadal's to be pushed up way high, but it's just so strong against like almost every deck. It's just my favorite side card of all time, and I guess it's really good against Burning Abyss and Satellar's because Satellar's you can stop their loop with it. In Burning Abyss you can hit the Dante or the Seer if you really need to, or the Rank Up Magic even. And then there's just so many other decks it's good against. If you draw against Mermails, you win. I mean, there's just so many.
Yep.
There's so many things it just shuts down, and so many rogue decks too. And it's just my favorite side card of all time.
It's one of those cards where if a very high level player is playing it and they know what deck they're playing against, they will pick the right card, and you just kind of get left out.
For sure. It's also gives me an option against spell books, because sometimes you run into spell books and if you haven't been thinking about them in the back of your mind, your side deck has nothing for them, which is a problem. So I have DD Crow at spot number 6.
Okay, and now jumping up to spot number 5. We're halfway through the list, and starting with Ryne here.
My number 5 card is Mystical Space Typhoon, and I'm justifying putting it number 5 just because it's not like I really like having to use this card that much. Sometimes I main it, but it's just, if I'm not maining it, it has to be in the side deck just because floodgates exist. It doesn't really have any other purpose besides that. It's just for the floodgates, pretty much. So I guess it'll just be spot number 5, right in the middle.
Okay, any comments on that?
I once again, this is one of them that I excluded from my list because of I try to think of what deck do I side that against, and I wasn't able to say, oh, they're running Shadal, so I'm gonna run MST. No, they're running Stellar Knight, so I'm gonna run MST. I do agree with Ryan that you never know when you're gonna run into that random deck where Georgia that does the macro and DeFi, and you're completely screwed if you don't have MST in order to get around it, which happened to me.
Or you're playing with Mermails and you just have no outs to those 2 cards, and you have to run like triple MST, triple Twister, and Feather Duster in your side. And I understand kind of how that works.
So
yeah, I think the general idea of MST is you just kind of side it in game 2 every single time regardless, just because people will side in floodgates. It's just how the game works.
Yeah.
It's just whenever it's not being mained, the reason it's not being mained is because people aren't maining the cards that stop you, I guess. So.
See, I would have never actually known that. I've never actually played at a high enough level to get insights like this. So it's actually kind of cool. I guess I've never thought about it that way. But in any case, moving on to Leon, number 5.
Number 5 is kind of a dual card again, like my forbidden one. This one is macro and DeFi. I think that against a lot of decks, especially Shadal's, getting rid of those stupid loops, Stellar Knights, getting rid of those loops, Burning Abyss, getting rid of those loops, makes a huge difference, and macro DeFi does that very well.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen macro DeFi in a lot of side decks that it doesn't really necessarily hurt. So I guess I've just seen that card around a lot, so I understand that pick.
And the other thing is, once you get your monster out and you've got an advantage at that point, you bring out macro DeFi,
and you just squeeze them. They have to have answers to both your monster and the fact that they can't even make plays with their own monsters. They have to try to get rid of you with their spell and trap presence for the most part.
And even at that, you've got enough lead at that point. You're just going to hang on until either they run out of cards or you're going to trade 1 for 1 until you've got enough lead, you're gonna beat them.
Yep. Okay, and then moving up to number 4, Leon.
Number 4, I didn't know about this card until just recently. This card is DD Ground,
I've actually
or
never heard of
Different
it.
Dimension Ground.
Oh, it's like macro for a turn.
Interesting.
Yes,
I've actually never heard of this. I'm very curious.
and it's macro for a turn, and you flip it on their turn. So when you see them setting up their loop, you do the Different Dimension Ground, and it comes back to your turn, and you have a normal graveyard, and they've lost cards or done no plays, and you've essentially earned a free turn.
It seems like that would be very meta with like today's graveyard effects. Like everything's out of graveyard.
Yep.
Yeah, it basically just gives you a DeFi macro you can use if you can't use DeFi macro.
So do you
And
agree?
it's not limited at all. It's you're unlimited. You got 3 cards, and
Yeah, but
pretty
they're all one-shot bursts. You
yeah.
know.
But still, at that, I mean, you're going to interrupt their play.
Do you agree,
Because
Ryan? It should be this high on the list at number 4.
I mean, honestly, I kind of like. I don't like floodgates already, and then the fact that you have to inherently -1. It's been played against me before, and usually when people flip that, I get happy that's not something else.
Okay.
I can see why some people like it too. I have
I
never.
really, as I said, I really like it because it works into my trap set because I run both. Uh, I run both the breakthrough skill and
Fiendish.
if I can breakthrough skill them and then also do the other one,
The other
uh,
one being fiendish, I'm assuming.
fiendish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry. If I can do fiendish and breakthrough skill, and then have this set also, it's enough to disrupt their process. And when they finally do get their stuff in the graveyard, all of a sudden it's gone, and it's not really in the graveyard, and it's more about disruption. And hopefully, I have enough disruption that I can get my plays off before they do.
Okay. So now over to Ryan at number 4.
My number 4 card for the format is Maxi.
Okay.
I'm not the biggest fan of Maxi ever, just because like sometimes it's just like you can't draw it into an established board and expect to be in a good place, but at the same time you almost need it against certain things. I think it's really good against decks that consistently special summon a million times every turn, like Burning Abyss. It's really good against because they're just gonna like you're guaranteed to get your even with your Maxi, so you'll just interrupt them and stop them. And if they happen to take your challenge, you'll probably out advantage them. And it's also good it's good against a bunch of random things that come up. But of the top 3 decks, it's only Burning Abyss I think that I'd put it in against. But it's just a really solid card, and it puts you in a really good place when you see it
Okay.
against the decks that it's good against. So I like
I
Maxi up there.
I do agree with the Max C call on this, but once again, I went through all the decks I've ever done, and I've noticed that I main Max C more than I sided. And hence it didn't make my list because of the fact that I just liked the putting that fear in the back of their mind.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense. So now moving on to number 3, starting with Ryan here.
My number 3 card is Caius the Shadow Monarch. I think Caius is a really strong card. I mean, honestly, Ryza is almost equally as good because they both do the same kind of thing, and they have a little different bonuses on them. Like Ryza gets rid of the card the same way essentially, but it doesn't do the damage. But then Ryza can't be hit by super polymerization. But since super polymerization is on the list at 1, it's not as big a deal anymore. And Caius can do the tribute for self, target self, inflict 1,000 for game kind of thing.
Yep.
And then, but those cards are really nice because they get rid of it's almost guaranteed to to go to plus or to at least hit a card, because with things like Majesty's Fiend, people can just destroy it when you summon it, and it just won't work. And you can't Majesty's Fiend into an established board. But if you have a Caius or Ryza, you're guaranteed to have a card get off their field, because you're either going to banish it or they're going to use a card to stop you from banishing it. So it's guaranteed to get a card off their field. And a 2400 monster that was normal summon inflicts a lot of pressure. And applying pressure is something that's really important to do to win the game. You can't 101 a Caius the Shadow Monarch, you know.
Yep.
I mean, I know Castell exists right now, but going into a Castell against that card, really the best play ever.
I feel like you minus too much.
It just puts you in a really good place when you resolve the summon of a Caius or Ryza. So I put him as number 3. Also, banishing things is pretty big right now. Banish a Shadal, banish a Dante, banish a Deneb. Those are kind of things that are stop those loops.
Yep. Okay, and on to number 3 for Leon.
Number 3, I have Light and or Shadow Imprisoning Mirror.
Okay.
And the reason I did that is 84% of the decks that top are the big three: Shadal's, Burning Abyss, or Stellar Knights. And then the other ones that have been topping, that are right at the top of topping, are Bujins at like 1.87%, and um, Bujins and Light Lightsworn and a few others. And once again, the Light and Shadow Imprisoning Mirrors do a number on all those decks.
Okay. I mean, it makes complete sense, I guess, but I don't know if I would ever. I guess my main issue with the card is the fact that most decks that are being run right now are not even able to use those cards because they require those cards. It's one of those weird
Double-edged sword.
Exactly.
It's kind of like Shadal's side Light Imp and Stellar's side Shadow Imp, and Burning Abyss somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Like, it's kind of weird. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan necessarily. I guess I've never really played around with the card too much, though. But what are your thoughts on that, Ryan?
I mean, I hate floodgates.
You've mentioned that.
They don't do anything into established boards, but I mean, Pat Hopen plays floodgates and he wins tournaments, so I don't know how credible I am. But like, I feel like there are better ways to deal with problems than stopping your opponent from having problems. When you have a floodgate and your opponent has the MST, you know your opponent's going to side in 3 MST. Yeah. So why side in 3 cards that get hurt by what they're siding in?
Mm-hmm.
I try and take out back row 1 game 2 sometimes because people will side in MST, and an MST doesn't do anything when you don't have back row.
Yep. Okay, that makes complete and total sense. So now on to, I think, number 2, right? If I'm not mistaken, with you, Leon.
My number 2, Ryan has already mentioned it, is DD Crow. And I agree 100%. Removing a card from the game is super important right now. And DD Crow being able to do that as a hand trap is really nice. And the other thing is, it's not really a dead card in your hand. You draw it, and they've got an established board, and it's not the card that you need. You can still set it so you have a chance of surviving till the next round instead of playing it as a hand trap. So yeah, DD Curl comes in at number 2, partially because of its flexibility, but mainly because of its power from its main ability.
Okay, on to you, Ryan, at number 2.
I wanted to comment on DD Curl.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Too. That is like my favorite side card of all time. The only reason it's not higher in my list right now is because it doesn't do anything to Shadal's.
Yep.
So I couldn't justify putting it at number 1, but in the long run, he's my MVP.
Okay. So now you're number 2.
My number 2 is Malevolent Catastrophe.
Okay.
I really like this card because, like I said, people side in floodgates and you can take care of all of them at once. It's also a really nice card if you're playing artifacts because you can just set your artifacts to Malevolent Catastrophe and clear their board, with 2 cards.
Yep.
People don't always expect it, and it's a really nice thing to resolve a malevolent catastrophe. And then if, like, let's say you lose game one and you side in malevolent catastrophe game two, you take it out for game three because they're afraid of it the whole game three, and you don't want to make that your strategy when they know it. So it's a specifically reserved for game two, but it is an extremely strong game two card.
I I have minor issues with how slow it is because it doesn't go until the attack phase.
That is true, but the only way for your opponent to really win is by attacking you, unless they're playing Zodi or Burn.
Well, and I agree with that, but my main thing is a lot of one, especially when you get into the top table, the top row of tables, um, people don't attack blindly. They feel everything out first and make sure that it's safe before they move forward.
Yep.
So once again, that said, um, I think I agree that it's a super strong card, and as a matter of fact, I play Malcat over MST in main decks just because of what you were saying. It it is a stronger version, um, and with today's meta, not a lot of people are running artifacts with the Shaddolls. Not a lot of people are running artifacts with Stellar Knights.
Yeah, well, the thing is with Malcat, when they have artifacts set, it destroys them on their turns. They don't go off.
Exactly.
So,
They still come out in the field, but they
oh,
don't go off.
if it's their turn, they don't even hit the field.
Oh, they don't even hit the field.
Nope.
And you can set the artifacts if you have them in your deck yourself, and then yours will go off, so you can destroy the monster that attacked you too.
So yeah, I as I said, I really like it. I'm just not a I just was mentioning about it being a little slower because there's an opportunity for them to get rid of it with their Shaddol Dragon or their MST or whatever else.
Okay. So I guess now we move on to the pinnacle of the list, number 1. Ryne, take it
The
away.
number one card for this format is Neospatian Grand Mole.
Okay.
I mean, it handles the problem and it lets you keep handling the problem over and over and over. It literally it gets over the Vanity's Emptiness Kibito lock, the Vanity's Emptiness Stardust Spark lock, and that's one of the strongest locks in the game right now. And the fact that this one card single-handedly gets over it, and then you get to keep the card for future use, is just a huge reason. And then, I mean, also, if you have it against Shaddolls, you can hit their set monsters, you can hit their fusions. You have it against Burning Abyss, you can hit their Dante, you can hit their, Downer Magician if they're being wise and summoning that. If they have a Pallades, you summon Grand Mole and automatically gets bounced back to your hand,
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. I guess I've never really thought about them in that way too much, but I haven't really played around too much this format at all anyway, so I'm not one to
Believe it or
judge.
not, my number one card is exactly the same for exactly the same reason.
Wow. That was a good way to... This is not scripted by any means. In fact, we don't even know each other's lists at all. We just kind of got on this call and just started talking, so I'm completely dumbfounded that you both came to the same conclusion, and I didn't even consider the card at all when I was thinking in my head about these top 10 cards.
I mean, I used it when I went to the Des Moines Regional. It was pre-ban list, but I decided in against Shaddolls, and the one Burning Abyss mirror I played, I didn't see it, but when I drew it against Shaddolls, I just automatically won the rest of that game because it just got around everything. And it's once your opponent knows you have it too, they don't get to make the plays they want to make anymore, and it just puts you in a good place. So.
And it doesn't matter the deck that you're playing either. It's one of those cards that it's good. You're running a burn deck, and it's good in a burn deck. You're running it just doesn't matter. It's good everywhere. Where a lot of the other cards, I don't want to say they're situational, but they're somewhat situational. Neospatian Grand Mole is good everywhere.
I guess that kind of wraps everything up. You guys are in complete agreement with each other. Any last comments or remarks?
I wish there were more options for side deck cards this format, but my side decks are pretty much a bunch of 3-ofs or 2-ofs. Like I've got the one I took in to Des Moines. My side deck was composed of double Caius, double Crow, triple Maxi, double Catastrophe, Neospatian Grand Mole, and then I had a Karma Cut sided, but that's like deck specific. And then there's just like there weren't that many things. Like I can make a 15 card side deck, but I'm probably truly only going to use the hand traps, the Neospatian Grand Mole, the Caius, and the Malevolent Catastrophes.
And the rest is just super situational and not worth your time.
Yeah, I think I had Nobleman sided at the regional. It's not that great against Shaddolls because if they have Shadow Games, you just lose. Even if they don't have Shadow Games, it's really nice. I'd sided in against Shaddolls and let them preemptively use their Shadow Games, and I'd use it on their Falcon, but I was already in a good place anyway, so I probably didn't need it to win the game. So, I mean, I'd like a different option, but there's not that many cards right now that are that good. I should probably be siding Emptiness because I'm not maining it, but I just don't like the card, so I'm probably not going to use it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess that's it for closing remarks. That's all we have for today's show. Don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe, and join us next week for more Yu-Gi-Oh! Tuesday. I've been Devin, and for everyone here at Lemon Drops Gaming, see you next time.